Okay.
And the words that are used as identity, the fact that we know for a fact that homosexuals existed since the beginning of human existence, but the word itself probably only existed, I don't know, 100 years to understand. So the understanding of it is completely different. And what I'm trying to say is the word atheism itself meant something 200 years ago, or is used away 200 years ago, in a place where the church was way more dominant in our culture. The culture has changed. And when the culture changes and becomes more enlightened, there's way more nuance into understanding of, does God exist? Does it not exist? Do I believe it exists? Where do I stand on the position? All of these different positions probably didn't even exist 200, 300 years ago.
Okay, can I address this? Because
sure.
I'm glad you brought this up. You talk about agendas. For the last couple hundred years, as you recognize, because I can go back to 1700, the word atheism has typically been understood, as we've already established, to have a positive belief that God does not exist. Okay, you've already agreed upon this. Now, the agenda was started, this agenda, right? You talk about agenda from creation.
Agendas, exactly.
Yeah, there is an agenda from the atheist, okay? The American atheists have an agenda, and their agenda is... I didn't interrupt you, so please, I didn't interrupt you. Can I please get this out?
No, wait, I want to be clear. The American atheists, the actual group, started by Silverman, or are you talking about...
Yes, American Atheist by Silver. Well, he didn't start American Atheist. That was started by O'Hare. What is her name?
Madeline O'Hare?
Maddie, yeah. Was it O'Hare?
I think so.
Oh, yeah. the lady. That found, yes.
Okay, so the agenda for American Atheist, and this is straight from Pam Whistler, their editor-in-chief, told me this. One, she said, don't use American Atheist as a philosophical citation. Second, they have two things that their points are. One, they want to get as many people to use the word atheism to normalize it, and two, they want as many members as they can get. They don't care if it's philosophically sound or not.
Okay.
That's their agenda.
Okay.
David Silliman has said his agenda is to get dictionaries to change the word usage to say lack of belief, and he doesn't care if it's philosophically sound or not. It doesn't matter to him.
Okay.
His goals are politically motivated because he wants to have as many atheists as possible for political reasons. This is not conspiracy. This is in his book, Fighting God.
Okay.
You can read about this. Okay.
Okay.
So, 1972, are you familiar with a paper called Presumption of Atheism?
No.
Okay. In 1972, a paper called Presumption of Atheism by Anthony Flew. Anthony Flew was a atheist philosopher who later in his life supposedly became more of a deist, who changed his argument on this. He actually realized there's some flaws with it, and there's some very good papers about why presumption of atheism is flawed. I'm not going to go into the details of that, why we have a system of innocence. But I will say that if you read that paper, Anthony Flew in 1972 acknowledges the usage of the word atheism to be the positive case. He's arguing, what you're arguing, that it should be just merely a lack of belief. That's what he's saying. He's actually saying, I agree that in philosophy it's used as a positive belief, which some atheists still haven't recognized, but I want to be this. And this was unanimously rejected back in the day. It was picked up a little bit later in 1974 by a guy named George Smith, and he wrote a book called A Case Against God. And then other people picked it up, like Steve Bullivant and Martin, and a few other people that wrote about it, but they're not really, none of them admit that atheism is used the way you're claiming you suggest it should be used in philosophy. They all seem to agree that in philosophy, typically it's used this way. Bullivant says there's no specific definition, which is right. I mean, words don't have intrinsic meanings, right? They don't have intrinsic definitions. Not like in math where you say a triangle is divided by three sides. You don't say a definition is such that atheism is this, right? Okay, so the presumption of atheism was rejected. Now there's a modern approach to that. There's a modern resurgence of that, and that's by American atheism. They have an agenda to try to get people to think that atheism is merely a lack of belief.
Great.
So that's agenda-driven. That's ideological. That's not how it is in philosophy, which typically speaking, as you agree. So you talk about creationists having an agenda. Well, here's a case of atheism has an agenda too. I'm not agenda-driven.
Okay.
This is why I can think critically about these things.
All right. So one group has an agenda and the other group has an agenda. I think one thing that we need to understand is the word atheist was not... My argument is that the church defined what atheism meant.
What was the original use of atheism? Or of an atheist?
I don't remember what the original use of atheism, but what I'm
it was
trying
for
to
Christians.
say is the church...
Christians were atheists.
The church wants atheism.
No, listen to me very carefully. The original use of atheos, was to refer to Christians that didn't accept the Roman pantheon gods.
Okay.
Okay, so they believed a God exists, but they were called atheists because they were, quote, without gods, as people bring up the etymology. But etymological concerns are not how the words are used in modernity. So even though etymologically, yes, it is without gods, and it is true that all atheists are without gods, but so are other positions that are non-atheist, right? Agnostic is without gods, and agnostic is not atheism. But these words, like you said, do change, right? I have no problem with the words changing.
Right.
But for the last 300 years, this is how the word is accepted to be in the philosophical literature. And what you're saying is not just, I think it should be used differently, like Flew argues. You're making a value judgment and say it's used incorrectly.
Right. I mean, if I think a word...
By what objective standard are you saying that it's incorrect? You're saying all philosophy is wrong. Why?
Sir, if I think a word should be used a certain way, that would mean people who use it differently would be incorrect.
Okay, but you're making a value judgment here. And
That's fine. What's wrong with making a value judgment?
That's fine, but you have to be able to substantiate that with evidence. What evidence are you using to show, not just your opinion? You're saying that it's wrong. What makes it wrong?
The reason why I think it's wrong is because theism to me means belief in God. Does theism mean belief in God? Can we all agree? Because this is what we're talking about. If everyone can agree that the word itself means this, so we can use that.
Well, again, it's used that way. Again, I don't want to get into meaning.
We have to agree on the
theism
word.
Is used to understand. Well, we don't, because I'm telling you how it's actually used, and now you're saying not just that you want to use. Not just that you're not saying that you're going to use it the way we use it in philosophy. I accept that. You're making a standard. You're making a value judgment that the word itself usage is incorrect or wrong.
Philosophy.
Okay, what makes it incorrect? Not just by you're saying I want to use it differently. If I say 1 + 1 = 3, I can show you mathematically that's not the case.
You're talking about mathematics. We're talking about language. That's two different.
These are analogies. Okay, analogous language means that I'm showing you that you're literally saying that it's incorrect, which means you need to show by proof or evidence that it's incorrect. Not just that you have a different usage, right? If I say, well, I'm using it differently. Okay, go ahead.
I'm trying to tell you. What is a theist? That's my question.
A theist is somebody who believes that there's a God.
A person that believes there's a God. What does A mean?
You mean like an atheist?
Yes. What does A mean?
It's understood as per Dr. Paul Draper in the Stanford Encyclopedia.
Paul Draper.
Why do you keep interrupting me?
Because we're trying to about what we all agree on.
I'm explaining to you how it's used in the literature.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's fair to, kind of quote where he got his definition from.
Yeah. So the standard for this, by which it is to best be understood, as per Stanford Encyclopedia, A is the negation as in not. It actually says specifically, and I'll read it to you if you wish. I have it actually right here. It says, here we go. The A in atheism must be understood as the negation instead of absence, as in not instead of without. Therefore, at least in philosophy, atheism should be construed as the proposition that God does not exist. Okay, so what he's saying is that if you have the proposition God exists, the negation of that is God does not exist.
Yeah,
so,
I disagree with that.
Okay, well, that's logic. I mean, you're literally saying
it's not logic, because you're changing what theist means. And a theist is not trying to say that God exists. A theist is belief. Belief. That's the key word here.
Okay.
We're not talking about
this is logic 101. You have P, and then you have not P. Belief of P or belief of not P is not dichotomous.
Proposition. P, the proposition.
The proposition P is the case that God exists ontologically, or God does not exist ontologically. P or not P.
So a theist believes P, the proposition.
And an atheist believes not P in philosophy.
Wait a minute. No, it's not P. No, because you're bringing up the proposition. You don't need the proposition. You need the belief. Theist is belief.
You're talking about what's called a
emphasis on the proposition. It's the belief. If someone tells you there's a God and you believe it, that makes you a theist. If I tell you there's a God and you don't believe, all that means is you don't believe. You are not asserting anything about the proposition other than your own belief. It's a statement on your mental acceptance of it.
Okay, what you're doing is you're conflating what's called a psychological belief with a propositional
A
belief.
psychological. Now we have another qualifier.
I'm explaining this to you. It's not necessarily qualifying it. Is what it is if you read have you ever read Stanford Encyclopedia on this?
I read the pieces that you put online.
Okay, I would highly recommend actually reading the entire article. I really would recommend it.
You're acting as if I don't understand, and I understand.
I'm not trying to say you don't understand because I don't think you do, but I'm more arguing you haven't researched this as well as you need to actually make the arguments that you're trying to make.
You have to explain what I'm not understanding.
Okay.
Because I don't have to go to any papers. I got you. I want you to tell me what I'm not understanding.
Okay. Do you accept, again, in philosophy, I'm going to read it to you verbatim.
I don't know anything about philosophy. We're not talking about philosophy.
We are talking about philosophy. These are philosophical concepts.
Looking up at the sky. All right? All of us are looking up at the sky. We don't college or anything.
Kim, I think
sorry, the moderator wants to, I'm sorry.
I hate to cut in. I think he's trying to say just like he'll try to explain the philosophy, like what he's read in philosophy, and then ask if you agree with it. So I think he's not trying to turn the tables around.
Right. All right. So atheism is typically defined in terms of theism. Theism, in turn, is best understood as a proposition, something that is either true or false. It is often defined as, quote, the belief that God exists. But here belief means something believed. It refers to the propositional content of belief, not to the attitude or psychological state of believing. The reason they do this is because you cannot test beliefs. You can test propositions. I can say a proposition is true or false. God exists is true or false. It's called truth apt. I can't test beliefs. And I can't, to me, it's true that you have the belief that God exists, or you have the belief that God does not exist. Sure. So a theist, it is true that they hold the belief, but that's not what we're really asking. We're not asking, let me finish. We're not asking if it's true or false that somebody has the belief. What we're asking is ontologically, does God exist? So in the way these words are best understood in philosophy is that atheism is propositional, not psychological.
Well, do you understand that that's what my position is this entire time?
And you can have that position, but you're telling.
I'm not saying.
But you're saying my position is wrong. You're saying that philosophy is wrong.
It is.
Okay, but why?
You keep asking me, and every time I try to answer, you keep interrupting me.
You have all the time in the world. I'm curious why you think something's wrong. By what objective standard you?
I believe it's wrong because it causes confusion.
That doesn't make something wrong.
Words causes way more confusion. The overwhelming majority of everyone in college is not taking courses in philosophy like this. Okay, so the common usage becomes, how do we all agree on how a word is supposed to be used? And you are using the school of philosophy as the absolute standard. You have become like preaching as if this is the absolute standard on how to use the word.
Hang on, let me correct you on that. No, I won't. Let me correct you on that because I don't like being straw man. Now you're straw manning me.
You're using the philosophy as your doctrine.
Let me finish. There is no absolute standard. And James.
Why do you keep going back to it?
Okay.
James, please moderate this because I'm getting tired of being interrupted when I'm trying to explain something.
I think Duke, if you're able to let Steve explain this, let's just kind of maybe if we break it into like a 2-minute like at least 2 minutes for Steve to talk, and then if Steve wants to give up, like let's say he takes a minute and a half, he can say, okay, now I'm ready to, the Duke can respond.
Yes, I'll do that.
Yeah, we started off you accepting the way it is in philosophy. In the very beginning, you literally said, yes, I accept arguendo, or I accept that your evidence, and again, I can show all this evidence that this is how it's used in philosophy. Now you're moving into a psychological state, which is completely something different. But what I'm telling you is I'm not saying this is the absolute standard. I'm making the argument this is how it's used, just like I would say that in biology, evolution is a change of allelic frequency. That's how it's understood. That's material fact. You're telling me now that's not how it's used in philosophy, even though that's what you said before it was used in philosophy. So now to me, what I hear is, if this was a biological conversation, you're telling me that's not correct, that evolution is not a change of allelic frequency, right? That's how I'm hearing it. You're saying that's wrong. What makes the usages of this wrong? Not just that you don't agree with it, not your opinion, that's fine. But if you tell me that if I say evolution is a change of allelic frequency and you say that's wrong, I'm going to request a citation from you that supports your position that is incorrect. Do you have a citation that in philosophy what I'm telling people is incorrect?
Now you're asking me why is it wrong, and then you're asking me if I have citation.
Correct.
No, I don't need to present any citation. Why do I have to present some sort of authority figure?
All right, so I can dismiss your claim
And
outright.
you're also saying something that's not true about what I said. In terms of affirming or believing